To that point, one of the things when I was on the Children's Museum board a number of years ago, when Howard Loving was president, I saw Howard out here somewhere. We were talking about moving the Children's Museum off its location on Market Street. And at the time, there was a big push to move out to Carolina Beach Road because we could buy a metal building out on Carolina Beach Road with lots of easy parking, and it would be really cheap. And there was, why not do that? And that's the problem with the perception that has prevailed for growth for a number of years. We're able to stem that and say, listen, if you do that, it will be cheap, and you will be able to get something that will look good on the books for the first year or two. But the institution will die because you're not going to have the cultural mass, the critical mass of people and things around there to support the institution. You've got to be downtown. Well, we don't want to be downtown. The parking is a real problem down there. We'll die because there's no parking. We'll die because the crime is down there. People won't bring their families to downtown because, and you've seen what's happened. I mean, the Children's Museum has had a little bit of a rough patch. Rick Lawson's done a great job now in taking it to the next level, and it's really taken off recently. And it's a huge asset to our downtown. We need more children's museums to come downtown because you have to have those cultural amenities down there. The Cape Fear Future Commission is the 50 largest employers and civic leaders in the area, or about 50. And we meet on a quarterly basis, and we talked about downtown last year, and one of the things we said was identify the biggest problem areas and the things that you would like to see us address. And they really came up with the 3 C's, which were crime, or the perception of crime, cleanliness and identity issues, and then cultural amenities. I mean, there's got to be places for families and businesses and individuals to come downtown and do other than bars and restaurants and that type of thing. There's got to be a balanced cultural offering downtown. And I agree with the mayor. A park is a huge centerpiece of that can be a first step toward achieving that goal.
And I think the mayor laid down a challenge here. He said, look, this isn't a government problem, it's a community problem, and business and government, community leaders, all of us need to get involved, and I agree. The one thing I would say, though, is, in my view, what's really going to grow the downtown as quickly as possible is entrepreneurs, right? It's small businesses, it's medium-sized businesses, and hey, if we can attract some larger businesses, that's great. But at the end of the day, we have to put in, kind of the fertilizer to help those guys. So, let's take a look at the zoning. Let's take a look at what kind of incentives we can put in place that makes it easier for builders to come in there or entrepreneurs to come in there. Let's take a look at some tax incentives. We need a tax base, obviously, to pay for the downtown and the larger county in general. But let's have a long-term vision here. If you can create a structure that attracts the entrepreneurs, makes them give it a go down there, because you have the long-term view in mind, I think that makes a lot of sense. And we got to green it up down there. We got to keep improving the safety downtown. And at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneurs that are going to drive that downtown, in my view. I think the city's done a good job so far laying the foundation of the infrastructure under the ground and above the ground, parking, sewage, etc. But the rest of it's up to the community, right? We need the entrepreneurs to come in and take advantage of that infrastructure. There's more that we need to do on the infrastructure side. It's not done. 3rd Street's going to look a lot better. That certainly makes us happy at PPD because it makes the downtown, as Chris was talking about, look shiny and new. And I think that's half the problem. But the next part is creating incentives so that people come in and there's a business proposition there. There's a value proposition. Because at the end of the day, we're all motivated by, personal achievement of, for ourselves, our families, our companies that we're starting. So let's do things that incentivize, business growth downtown.
If I could follow up on the entrepreneur piece, there's a fine line between being an entrepreneur and being unemployed. I mean, there's really, it's a very, very narrow line. But one thing that I've seen, and I've seen this, and again, the recession, we've all battled through it, and we're still going through it, and most of us are still figuring out if it's ever going to end. But one thing that I've seen the last 2 years that's been a positive effect is I've seen more entrepreneurs show up downtown. And you know why? It's cheap, it's easy, you can collaborate better, you can fit yourself into whatever you need to do. But what's interesting is a lot of these folks started out in their homes, and that was the plan. but they realized they weren't getting stuff done because Dr. Oz was on and they were trying to do wash and everything else was happening. But the other thing was they were disconnected, and that's what's great about downtown. When you get downtown, it's hard to be isolated. It's hard to be disconnected. You can spend your whole life in front of a computer screen, but you still want some interactions. Even if it's a coffee shop and you're at your laptop, you still are around people. And so the basic premise is places like downtown allow you to have that benefit. But I will say, and this is something that WDI, between their business loan program and just the energy that we've created even more recently, you go around downtown, even 2 years ago, and the retail shops, hit and miss. Some were open, some were closed, some were boarded up. But upstairs, on the second level, they were always dark, always dark. And what's interesting is I'm seeing, every single month, there's the upstairs that's now being occupied. And consistently, those upstairs, whether it's DigiFX or Talo Gray, those guys are basically capturing what has always been underutilized space upstairs. That's mixed use, and that's something that is again, something you see downtown, and that is very encouraging. I can tell you, as somebody who's been here since the mid-90s, and if you want to talk about the bottom of downtown, what was the dip? And again, I like human geography, I like demographics, and I love cities. And what I like about cities is the bottom of downtown, the lowest point of our downtown was 1977. We didn't have just bars downtown, we had topless bars downtown, and that was the only bars we had downtown. And it was very, very unattractive, and a lot of people worked together to start making that turn. But that was only 35 years ago. 35 years in a city's life is like a 3-day weekend, because cities are usually centuries, or in some cases, millennia. So we've had this dip, but the momentum that we currently enjoy is incredible. You walk downtown, I don't care if it's a Monday or Tuesday. I was at Hell's Kitchen for lunch yesterday with Michael Moorfield, the architect, and I look across and I'm having a hard time paying attention because there's 16 golfers in Hell's Kitchen on a Tuesday. There's no golf course downtown. How do these people get downtown? What are they doing downtown? These aren't a bunch of suits. And that's when I started thinking, you know what? They went downtown because it's where the cool stuff is. And you can't get that. And not to knock the Monkey Junction people, but it's just not where you want to be. You want to go downtown. So.
And mix. I used to run a pharmaceutical plant, and it was always about volume and mix. And one thing I would say is we need to change the mix downtown. Downtown can't be just one thing. Dave was talking about there needs to be a residential aspect to it. There needs to be, an entertainment, quality of life aspect to it. There needs to be an entrepreneurial development aspect to it. We need to support all those to make downtown vibrant. And I think right now the mix is out of whack downtown. That's my thought. There's plenty of restaurants, there's plenty of bars, but the retail is a little weak downtown. What can we do to help that thrive? There's not enough green space. The mayor's got a great idea. That's out of whack, right? There's not enough green space. Take a look at the incentives. What kind of incentives can we put in place to try to change that mix? That's what I think is important.
Well, as a father, I have 3 children who are 6 and under, and so I spend a lot of time downtown with them. And Children's Museum that Chris mentioned, my wife is currently the president of that board, and I can tell you that is one of the most special places we've found. I do want more children's museums, but what I really want to focus on is what we've tried to do in the district attorney's office with respect to the arts. I think that is a big part. When you work with heavy stuff, it is important to be uplifted. And maybe you've seen we hold art competitions and bring the kids into the courthouse, and their art is what hangs on the walls. Many of you saw Georgi Pachevsky grow up in this community. The next Picasso, there's no question. He's sitting at our table right now because he's an intern in the district attorney's office. That's who I want working with me. But I really want to mention something that I think is so important when we talk about investment, because we have to look at the 900 officers I advise as a resource, the jail bed space as a resource. These are limited things, and how do we effectively use our time to fight crime? I'm not just the DA downtown, I'm also the DA on Market Street. And so if all we've done is displace crime, we're not solving it. It's so important that this crowd understands that the downtown that I frequently encounter in the courthouse is not the central business district. It's not the 4,000 DWIs we're going to have this year. It's the murders, the armed robberies, the stabbings, the shootings, the drug deals. That's 4th Street pushing back to Creekwood, literally out the front window of PPD. And so when the mayor and I are on the Blue Ribbon Commission, and Tafana Thomas is here from that group, and we're talking about a 20-year plan to really fight crime, it involves investing in education. You can agree with me if you want. We need to reopen DC Virgo. We need to reopen DC Virgo. I applaud the Downtown Rotary, of which I'm a member. There's 200 of us, who just adopted Williston as our century project. We're the same club that brought the battleship here 50 years ago. This is our 100-year plan to say, going forward long term, this is the best thing we can do for the city. If we are focusing on those 2 middle schools, you're going to help me fight crime. Otherwise, we're going to be just like Charleston, and everyone wants to be like Charleston, right? I was down there 2 weeks ago at a career prosecutor school, and I was talking to the DA there, and I said, you know, we're a historic city with a drinking problem, and I was talking about being ranked in the top 10 in the world in drinking. And he said, you think that's bad, Ben? We are a drinking city with an historic problem. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, you know, if you go off the grid even 2 blocks, you're in real trouble. If you've ever been to a beautiful place like Rio de Janeiro, one of the most beautiful places in the world, I wouldn't want to be the DA there because it's very safe in the tourist zone. Y'all aren't tourists. And I don't care if you live in Forest Hills or Landfall or off of Greenville Loop Road. If there's a breaking and entering in your house, that's the biggest thing to you, and that's when my phone's going to ring. I want to keep everyone safe, not just the folks who wander downtown for the theater or dinner, or who are drinking at 2 in the morning. And that involves a long-term plan to prevent crime, not just react to it after it happens. And that gets to the core of education. It gets to the core of what we're trying to do on the Blue Ribbon Commission. And the friendships that we form with the county, the city, the judges, the school board, the business community, the pastors, I can tell you, I believe that's going to be in place for decades to come.